Right.
Please introduce yourself, who you are, and what your profession is.
My name is Jesse Griffin. I am who I am. I'm a teacher. I'm a dad. I have friends, like four, but still. Um, I like to think that I'm a mentor. I like to think that I'm many things, but those are the big ones. And I am an English teacher at EVHS.
As a teacher, what are the primary goals of this career?
Really, it's to prepare students for whatever's next, like trying to give as much knowledge and tools within sort of the guidelines as you can so that students can navigate um, future events, really.
What is work like on a day-to-day basis? And generally speaking, what is the overall working experience like?
One of the things that I think is interesting about teaching, and this, of course, is because I have very little experience with other careers, but you have to be at a certain place at a certain time. Like you can't just show up 30 minutes late for a class and expect everybody to be okay. Like I can't just move my day over 30 minutes. So the experience is really kind of rigid in terms of time. But the nice thing, one of the things that I particularly enjoy about this job is that the experience allows me to work with people rather than things. I've done things, you know, updating third party databases and that kind of stuff. And although I could do it, at the end of the day, there weren't any stories. There wasn't really a lot of fun. It was just like, man, I updated 87 accounts today. It's a different sensation.
Yeah. Can you explain a little bit about why time constraints would be kind of important or
Well,
essential?
because it's not just my time, it's everybody else's time.
Mhm.
So my ability to work within time frames affects the other 30 people that I'm interacting with at the same time. So it's not just I'm responsible for my time, I'm responsible for theirs as well. And kids, especially in high school, are busy. I mean, legitimately busy, not just like I'd rather do something else. They like have other things to attend to. And so it behooves me to be respectful of that.
All right. And then what aspects of your job would you say are your favorite?
My favorite. I really like people. I find them fascinating. Um, and you meet some really, really just interesting people in this job. You get exposed to all kinds of experiences and walks of life and perspectives and things just because you cycle out 150 people every year. Um, and getting to interact with people is really a lot of fun because some of our students, and I'm sure you're aware of this, uh, are just fun people, and it really is a huge boon to this job. Everybody I know who, say, for example, gone into administration, right, become a principal. Principals don't get to interact with kids nearly as much, and every single one, without fail, has said that that's the only thing they miss going into admin is that they don't get to work with kids. I mean,
I
it's
see.
fun.
Mhm. What are there any promotions within this career? And if so, how do they work?
Promotion, as in like moving up, say,
Yeah,
a level.
yeah.
Well, to not answer your question first, there are a lot of laterals with teaching, meaning there's a lot of things you can do within the teaching profession that you're still a teacher, but you take on different responsibilities. Like the activities director is a teacher, but they're on special assignment. A counselor is still a teacher, they just have special training. There's like a special certificate for that. But you're still a teacher. Advisors, like Belich or I can't think of their names now. Bald guy rides around in a golf cart. He's a teacher, but on special assignment. So, with that in mind, there's a lot of things you can do as a teacher, but you're still a teacher in terms of sort of like the hierarchy of things. Um, but if you wanted to become an administrator, you need another certificate in order to do that, and 2 years of education. So you need a master's degree um, in order to get promoted. I put that in quotes because I don't. eh.
Yeah. So, what drew you to this job and how did you get into this field?
I was a drama kid and I really enjoyed performing. And I realized that a lot of my friends who went into acting careers had to do really just awful entry level work in hopes of being discovered. And very often that took decades. And I thought, well, that's awful. So I've always had a taste and a knack for English. And so I decided to go that route. Which still affords me the ability to perform, as it were. But I have a captive audience. Like legally, they have to be there, which is nice. And the paychecks are steady.
So, what should I do to begin pursuing this career to become a teacher?
Many colleges offer teacher preparation programs where they will literally build you a set of coursework so that you can go into teaching. Teaching requires usually there's ways around it, mind you, but usually you get a degree in whatever it is you want to teach, be it science, physical education, which is like kinesthesiology and stuff, math, English. And then after that, you have to go into a credential program where you are credentialed to teach. You're taught how to teach. So it's no longer the coursework or the curriculum. It is now the actual, I guess, skill set of teaching. But I would note that there's a difference, I think notable difference between knowing your curriculum and knowing how to teach. I think those are two broadly different skill sets.
Could you explain a little bit why they're so different and like why I guess knowing how to teach would be important rather than just knowing what your curriculum is?
Knowing how to teach is really subjective at this point. There really isn't a sort of straightforward way to do it, um, which I'm kind of thankful for, honestly, because I think if it was highly regimented, like on Tuesday, you're going to say this, I think that would be awful. But because you're working with people, I feel like in order to be really good at it, you have to really be flexible in working with human beings. And I realize that my teaching philosophy is not the only teaching philosophy. So I'm not saying that it's the best, but it's the best for me and what I perceive teaching to be. Some people, there's a large distance between them and their students as human beings, where the curriculum comes first. You know, these are the things we have to accomplish, and these are the skills you have to meet. And that's, I also think, useful. It's not my style, but I think it's useful because depending on the kind of work you do, that's really going to be the environment. You know, I don't care what you did last night. We have things we need to get done today, and so get to it. Um, but I have met people who knew their curriculum top to bottom, but couldn't explain it to other human beings. And to me, that's just not a good teacher.
So, what sort of degrees does a person need to have in order to qualify for this kind of work as like a teacher and then to specifically become an English teacher?
There's what's known as highly qualified. I don't know if that's still a thing, actually. But to be considered highly qualified, you either have to teach for a certain number of years in a particular curriculum, or you have to have a degree in that particular subject field. Like in the English department, we have several teachers who have degrees in like philosophy, and very few of us actually have degrees in English, um, which is understandable. There's really not a lot you can do with an English degree, reflectively thinking about it. But I think it helps. I mean, the more training you've got, the more tools you've got in your bag, kind of thing. Um, And then post grad, once you get your bachelor's degree, because you got to go, your 4 years, then you have to get credentialed, which gives you post grad credits, but it doesn't give you a degree. And then our pay scale is determined by two things. You go down the pay scale, which means you get paid more, based on years of service, which is nice because then it doesn't become subjective, right? Doesn't matter how old I am, doesn't matter what my gender is, like nothing comes into play. My sexual preference, nobody cares. Years of service. And the other one is education level. So if you've got a bachelor's degree and that's it, you're on the first, what they call tier. And then as you get more and more college credits, you move over. And so theoretically, if you move right and down, you're making more money as a teacher. I feel like I over answered that question. I
Oh,
apologize.
no, don't worry about it. Are there any programs that you recommend or any exercises that people should take as part of building experience?
Exercises. That's an interesting way of phrasing it. A lot of the things that I did in theater have paid off a great deal in terms of being able to explain something and formulate ideas very quickly on my feet. Like I don't have to super pre-plan what I'm going to say. I have to get sort of the nuts and bolts together. Like, what is a comma splice? Like I have to get that specific information, but once I've got it, then I know how to explain it in several different ways. So I distracted myself with a comma splice. Now I'm thinking about comma splice. Would you repeat the question?
Yes. Are there programs or things that people should essentially practice to be a good teacher, to like sort of build experience, like tutoring or just teaching other people?
I imagine tutoring could help because you've got to explain concepts. I could see that as being beneficial, but obviously, as a student, you recognize, especially in high school, you recognize what classroom management looks like how you get 30 people to work with you on things that they genuinely don't want to work on. There's a whole skill set involved in classroom management, and it's one of the hardest things about teaching, but it's also one of the most basic because without classroom management, everything else kind of goes up in smoke. And so learning how to manage a group is a good thing. Being aware of, AP Lang, being aware of your rhetoric, like how do you approach a kid? When is it time to sit down with a kid and go, you're not going to graduate at the rate at which you're working, and you sort of give them a little punch in the reality versus being supportive. When do you go, you know what, I understand things are challenging and we need to make some adjustments because at this point you're in danger of not passing. It's the same message, but like which one is going to get the kid going the direction they need to go? And having sort of the emotional intelligence to be able to do that, I honestly don't know how one learns that.
Yeah, I hear you. Could you explain a little bit about like is the difference between like being like a regular English teacher and teaching AP Lang or like AP Lit?
Ms. McMillan, when I was going to get AP trained, I was honestly intimidated. I was scared to death to teach AP because I was like, the stakes are so high. The content's hard. What do I do? But learning how to teach AP has honestly made me a better teacher all around. Because especially with Lang, because rigor is not more. I don't have to give students, my regular classes, I get 10 pages. My AP class, I get 25. Like that doesn't make it harder. It's just more. And so it's about developing skills without driving somebody into the ground with sort of tedium. AP has been highly advantageous for me as a teacher. Even if I stopped teaching AP, I still think I would be a better classroom teacher just in general. in terms of structuring coursework and getting kids to understand concepts without having to beat kids about the head and shoulders with information. I can give them ways to practice that are useful, and the sort of cost benefit is better for the student and me. I mean, obviously, if the students don't have to produce as much poo, then that's less poo I have to sift through. By that, I mean grading.
Are there certain qualities and skills a person should have in order to do well in this career?
See, now I don't know, because there's teachers that I liked, but I also know that my learning method is not a good representation of the students at Evergreen Valley High School. And I've actually started to question how useful my methods are at Evergreen, because my experience and my students' experience were wildly different. The work ethic and the ideas of success and getting into a good college and things like that, those were on my radar as a kid, but I was very much interested in enjoying my life. Like I was very much into sort of the aesthetic of living, as it were. And many students willingly acknowledge that there's no time for that. And to be honest, that's kind of a shock to my system, because that's how I understand the world. And so I'm not sure what would be considered good, because you're really in service to who's in front of you. And part of me believes that students need to be more well-rounded. And so if you're not familiar with the aesthetic of life, like I feel kind of responsible to teach them that, because, Maslow's hierarchy, it's part of being a complete human being. But part of me goes, well, if they don't want it, why are you forcing them into it, kind of thing? Like, if they want to go this route, who are you to tell them no?
What are some difficulties one might face as a teacher?
Should I start with the top 5 or top 500? The worst parts of the job, let me get to that, because I imagine that's what most people are interested in. The worst part of the job is sort of the manipulative factors that come into play. Every teacher I know does not care for sort of the manipulations that come either from parents or students themselves or from administration. Because we're a government agency, there's a certain amount of artifice that we use, because we're public figures. So that part of it is a little bit annoying. I don't like being lied to, especially if I'm trying to teach a kid honesty. You know what I mean? And they're like, "My aunt died again." It's like there's a conflict of interest there. So the manipulations, I think, are annoying, especially when they get aggressive, because then it takes up a lot of time. And it becomes a matter of, do I want to sacrifice the time to deal with this and stay on sort of, moral ground? Or do I just want to give the kid whatever credit they want and move on with my life? Because at the end of the day, what's the fight worth? And so that is kind of a constant. And with new teachers, that's particularly difficult, because their jobs are at risk, like their whole job. Their career could be changed if they don't handle it right. So that's a big problem. We don't get paid very much. That can be challenging, at least for the area. Like if I lived in Nebraska, I'd be, king of the world. But for the Bay Area, I'm a mere pauper. Another challenging part of the job, the kid you can't reach, the kid you can't help. Teachers, by and large, I find, just want to help at the end of the day. That's really all it is. And there are kids that you can see are going to suffer by sort of virtue of either their circumstances, which they have no control over, or by virtue of their decisions, which they do have control over. And as badly as you want to help them and sort of pull them out of whatever it is they're suffering from, you can't, for one reason or another. That is really, really hard. I've known many, many teachers who have lost sleep over worrying about a student. Um, whereas the things that the kids lose sleep over, we don't. Your essay grades, whatever. Like, I have total control over that. So, you know, I don't stress because I can decide to let you rewrite it. I virtually just change the grade. I wouldn't, because that's wrong, but um, things you don't have control over tend to stress you out. Let's see, what else is challenging about the job? You're pretty much unsupervised, so you don't often know if your decisions are good decisions. Um, think about how many times principals come into the classroom, and I'm not begging on principals. They have a lot of work to do, and there's an expectation that we're going to work on our own. But because of that, you really got to know how to gauge your own work and figure out that you're doing the right thing or the wrong thing. So you have to be highly reflective. Like, you always have to be kind of looking at what you're doing and what the results were and figure out if you're going where you want to go. That's 4, right?
Yeah, I think that's enough.
All right.
All right, and then what are some things that one should take into consideration before deciding to become a teacher? And were there things that you wish you had known beforehand?
Things you should know before becoming a teacher. It's a really stressful job until you sort of learn how to navigate it. Then it becomes less stressful. But a lot of people burn out real fast, and the statistics will prove that. The first 3 years, the turnover for teaching just across the board is really, really high. Don't expect people to praise you for being a teacher. Most people will hate you just by virtue of being a teacher. Just expect that. The kids, by and large, are really nice, though. Like, 1 in 10 is going to be a pain in the butt, but the other 27 are going to be great. There are some subjects I think would have been cool to teach, and I may have pushed myself a little harder in those directions. Like, teaching physics just looks fun. You get to set things on fire, there's explosions, you get to freeze stuff, you're firing little cars down the hallway. Like, what a great job. Me, I'm like, hey, look at the cover of this book. There's not a lot of toys in English, and that's not cool. Or I could have been a PE teacher and worked out for a living. Like, I could exercise pretty much 5 days a week. I'd be in amazing shape. I can imagine. So I missed that boat. So things I'd consider. And whether or not you like being around people. Oh, and age groups. Age groups is a big thing. Like, I don't think I could do little kids. I think I would quit that job because, Mr. Griffin. And like, I'd be like, gross, don't touch me, bro. Don't touch me. Don't touch me. Wash yourself. Don't touch me. If you touch me, I'm failing you and everyone you've ever known. And like, middle school is just so awkward. So awkward.
I agree. 13-year-olds. Okay.
Just standing there at the front of the room, just staring at them like, this is so awkward. So
in the middle of being a kid and trying to be a young adult too.
Oh yeah, that's the super transition period. I think I made a good choice on going into high school. High school kids are smart enough to be able to talk to.
Mhm.
Like, have you ever talked to an elementary school teacher when they're not working?
Yeah.
They're still elementary school teachers.
Yeah.
They're like, oh, honey, that's so nice. Oh, that's so sweet. I'm like, who talks like that? Look at this cute little elephant. Oh, let's put glitter on it. It's like, oh God. Really?
Yes. So how has this career impacted you and your life?
Now, sociology tells me that this might be a dude thing. Like, it's part of identifying as a stereotypical male in our society. But I kind of define myself a bit by my career. And so it meets a lot of my value systems. In my family growing up, people who did service jobs like teachers and cops and that kind of thing were held in very high regard because you were in service to someone else. Like your job was to make the world better or safer or whatever. So it fits in well with things that I think are important.
So, to extend on that, what do you enjoy most about your job?
That kid that shows up to class in like a bacon costume for no reason. When it's break time and you're sort of got your head back because third period just was just, I mean, hitting your last nerve with a ball peen hammer. And one of your old students comes in the room, they've gotten their arms up and they're walking towards you. I can't imagine you would understand what that looks like.
I feel like that is me.
Yeah, no, it's you.
Okay.
That's
Okay.
1000% who I was talking about.
Okay.
They're honestly some of the most rewarding moments I've had. And I don't know if this makes me shallow. If it does, well, then I guess I'm shallow. Is when people graduate and they come back. And I've had people sit down. I mean, I've had people get very mad at me too, but I've had people sit down and talk about sort of things that happened in high school that I knew nothing about. And them acknowledging that I was able to help in some way or another. Really, I mean, means a lot in terms of like feeling like I'm doing some good in the world. Because obviously when you're in the class, it doesn't, at least my perception is you don't get a lot when you're in the class because you're only the assignment that's in front of you. But when you get down the road and things start to make sense, they're like, oh, I see what this fits here. Like I get it now. And they come back and tell you about it. That's just tremendous. Also, an adult would take time out of their life to come back and give a flying about their high school English teacher. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like you meant enough to someone for them to take time out of their regular life with no reward whatsoever to just stop by and say hi and catch up and not talk about their grade.
Are there any last words? Are there any last words of advice you have for aspiring teachers?
Yeah. One, keep a sense of humor. I have gone through what I think maybe some of the hardest times of my life because I've been teaching for 21 years, right? And my classes, for better or for worse, even without knowing it, my classes have gotten me through those things with a lot less pain than I think I would have had otherwise, because they had a sort of lighthearted sense of humor and they did the thing. My life may be a shambles outside of the classroom, but as far as my interaction with them went, it was very positive, and so it provided me with that. You know what I mean? And the other thing I would suggest is try to work somewhere where you don't have to like chain yourself to a schedule. That was one of the most freeing things about teaching, was realizing that I don't have to be done with sentence structure in 3 days. You know what I mean? If it takes 5 days, it takes 5 days. If it takes 2 days, it takes 2 days. But like, stay flexible with that stuff. Sometimes kids will just be like, yeah, I got it. And you're like, okay, well, I have to teach it for 2 more days. No, you don't. Like, they got it. Move on. Take a couple days off. Play checkers. Draw on the desk. Draw on the board. Draw on each other.
Draw on water bottles.
Exactly. You see what I'm saying? You get it. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. All right. That concludes our interview. Thank you for that.